Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is authorize. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you're likely to hear authorize used is to mean to give official permission for something or give official approval to something. So many times with this first definition, we're talking about giving someone permission to do a particular thing or maybe not to do something. So many times this is going to be connected to another action. A second and very much related way to use this verb authorize is to mean to grant authority or power to someone. We might hear authorize used as we discuss government, right? And one branch or one part of the government might grant authority to another area or a certain department in order to do something. That idea of authority is pretty similar to the idea of permission, right? Maybe it might sometimes just be used for a wider range of activities instead of kind of permission to do one thing. You should know that authorize is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, we're going to drop the E because we have a verb that ends with a vowel consonant E pattern. So we drop the E anytime we're adding a suffix that starts with a vowel letter, like ing. The progressive form of our verb here is going to be pronounced authorizing, authorizing. To form the past tense and participle forms, all we need to do is add a D here to form authorized. Right? And as I say that past tense and participle form, you might notice I'm just making a D sound, right? And that's because our verb ends with a voiced Z or Z sound. So authorized, right? I'm not adding an extra syllable, so I'm not saying id with it. I'm just making the D sound. Okay. Now, you might be happy to know we don't have any additional phrasal verbs that we need to study in connection to authorize. So we can move on and begin practicing our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we're going to review the past perfect and the simple future with a focus on be going to. Let's start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about actions that were completed in the past. And sometimes as I've been teaching, I've had students say, well, why not just use the simple past tense? Why do we have this other form of the past? And many times it's used to help us know that a particular action occurred before some other action in the past tense, or it occurred before a certain period of time. To make the past perfect, you're going to see two P's here, which should help me remember I need two parts to my verb. I'm going to use the past form of have, which is had, and then I'm going to use the participle form of the verb. And that's going to be my structure in the affirmative. So I always start with subject, had, and then the participle form. And because authorized is a regular verb, my participle is going to look just like the past tense. Let's take a look at an example sentence. The FDA had authorized updated COVID-19 vaccines earlier this fall. So it might be that idea of giving approval, giving permission here for vaccines to be administered. This particular department has looked at them, found them to be safe, and so they give that permission. Now, if you want to make a negative past perfect sentence, you're going to do that by starting with your subject, using had not, and then the participle form of the verb. Now, you might hear people combine had not into the contraction hadn't. You can see that in my example here. The singer hadn't authorized the company to use her music. So maybe you've noticed really popular songs used as part of an advertisement or in movies. Companies and other organizations just can't take that music and use it. They need permission. So that's why we see the verb there in this particular sentence. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the past perfect. To do this, I start with had, then I'm going to have my subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. Had a judge authorized the search of the building? Okay. So, in the United States, our legal system requires kind of this idea of permission. A police force generally cannot just go any place and search because they think something may have happened, right? They will have to sort of get that permission. That's what that question is asking about. Finally, let's talk about making sentences in the simple future. Today, we're going to talk about sentences using be going to. This is one of three ways to talk about the future in English. And it's pretty common to hear people use this be going to as they discuss their plans. May still hear it in connection to promises or offers, but much less likely. So, what's important here when we're making simple future sentences is that we start with our subject and we pay attention to what that subject is. If the subject is I, then you're going to use am. That's the present form of be. And then going to and the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, you'll use is going to and the base verb. And finally, if your subject is you, we, or they, you'll use are going to and then the base verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. They're going to authorize the charges. This might be a way you've heard this verb used. Sometimes in connection to our credit cards or debit cards, we might get a call from our bank if something seems a little odd, asking you for permission for your card to be charged. So you might hear that question, will you authorize? Right? Are you giving us permission? Okay. So again, you'll see a contraction form of they are there, um, but it followed our pattern. So notice again, we're not adding any suffixes or endings to the verbs here. You're just using the base verb. Okay. Let's move on and talk about negative sentences in the simple future. To do this, again, we start with a subject, we pay attention to what that subject is because it's going to affect whether we use am, is, or are. But then we'll use not and going to and the base verb. Here's another example. The union members aren't going to authorize a strike. So, a single worker or a small group of workers cannot make this decision alone. They're going to take votes from all the members before permission is granted to engage in a labor strike. Finally, let's take a look at making a yes or no question. To do this, I start with my present form of be, whichever form matches my subject, and that subject comes next. And then you're going to see going to and the base verb. My last example here today is the United States going to authorize more funding for Ukraine? This is a question many people are asking, especially as our Congress has kind of come to a halt as far as passing bills as we await a new Speaker of the House. But now let's move on and continue talking about some words that are related to our verb authorize. And the first word we'll discuss today is the noun authorization. This can be the action of giving permission or the fact that permission or some power has been granted or given. An example of this might be Americans will need to apply for travel authorization to visit 30 European countries. This is a new rule. I can't remember exactly when it starts, but something true, right? We're going to need permission in order to travel abroad to these particular places. Another related word you might encounter is the noun authority. This noun can have a number of different meanings. I think I've picked out four that I thought you were most commonly going to hear or see when you were reading. And the first way the noun authority gets used is to refer to the power or the right to either give orders, make decisions, do those types of things. So, an example of this might be he has authority to approve or deny vacation requests. This must be referring to some type of manager or supervisor, right? Who has this power to decide if a vacation gets approved or if it doesn't. Now, a second way the noun authority gets used is to refer to official permission for something. An example of this: will congressional authority be needed for that? Right? So that could be a question about a new program or funding for something, but that sentence is referring to permission from Congress. A third way the noun authority gets used is to refer to either a person or an organization that has power or control in particular situations or circumstances. An example of this: health authorities will ensure that people have access to mental health support. So, this might be referring to many people, or perhaps a government agency, a public health organization, right, that has power to get people access to mental health support. A fourth way you might hear the noun authority used is to refer to someone who has extensive or very specialized knowledge about a subject. An example of this: she is an authority on disaster relief, right? So knows a great deal about maybe how to organize resources, how to help people in certain types of crises. Okay. One last phrase for us today, and that is to have something on good authority. When someone uses a phrase like this, it means that they feel they have information from a reliable or a credible source. Okay? So, an example of this might be: we have it on good authority that this project will only take 30 minutes. Now, this is not a phrase I hear every day, certainly, but when I've heard it, one of my immediate questions to someone says, I have it on good authority. Who is your authority, right? Because I want to be able to judge, is this person reliable or credible? But that is the type of person I am. I like to judge for myself instead of always taking other people's word for it. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.